Hello and good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Goldman. I'm the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and it's my pleasure to go over this week's topic, the psychology of portion sizes and why bigger plates lead to bigger meals. As we say every week, even though we're talking about portions in particular, it's also the quality of your calories that matters. So if you have a large portion of it, while we're trying to make sure that we don't overdo it, it's still good that in smaller portions, we're paying attention to the quality of those calories since they count so much more. Briefly, what we will cover this evening is the psychological response to some visual portion cues. Also, how plate size, packaging, and even environment can influence your intake. A few practical strategies, some new, some familiar, to help avoid portion distortion. A couple challenges that you can try out this week. And as always, I like to leave time for your questions at the end. Feel free to hit that question mark button at the bottom, and I'll be happy to answer questions about this topic or any other nutrition-related topic you may have. To get started, we will talk about the science of visual cues and portion perception. To be clear, this is definitely not a comprehensive list, but these were a few that I wanted to touch on. So there is an illusion effect where essentially it's a classic optical illusion where you will see that the same portion will look smaller on a large plate, but in reverse, you can see that on a small plate, it looks like a much bigger serving. And I don't want to incorrectly pronounce that optical illusion name that starts with a D there, but you can see how in this large plate, it looks like you're getting so much less and can maybe feel like you're missing out. And so when we have a larger plate, there's this desire to try and fill it up. And so there's the chance that larger tableware can lead to larger servings and larger consumption. There was also a woman, Dr. Barbara Rolls, who had created the portion size effect, where based on her research, she noticed that when people were served larger portions, they will also likely eat more. So say you have this larger plate that allows you to give yourself a larger portion, there's a very good chance you're going to eat that, even if a smaller amount would have been perfectly satisfying. Also, when we're talking about packaging, as well as environment and social cues, first and foremost, I think it's important to always touch on the packaging because people tend to eat about 1 unit of food. So if you have a bag, if you have a carton, if you have a plate, regardless of the packaging size, it seems to be this is what it is and this is what you eat, which is why having individual portion bags can sometimes help a lot of people because then they're not eating from a larger amount. But we can also see, based on this picture here, from portion sizes back in the day in 1960 versus portion sizes a little more recent, that what used to be a 120 calorie hamburger or cheeseburger, along with just a few fries and only an 85 calorie soda, was satisfying for the average adult. It has blossomed into this 590 calorie cheeseburger and also a soda, regular soda, that is 310 calories. So this growth, even though people are still eating maybe one of these, it's very hard to see the change in size when you're only looking at one in front of you. And so you may have been perfectly happy with this 1960s meals, but now that we've become used to what the image on the right under 2011, when we've become used to those sizes, then we then might find that the 1960s sizes were too small in our mind, but we probably would be perfectly happy with it. And so even if you're on a GLP-1 medication, you may still feel compelled to finish a single serving bag out of habit, or sometimes this obligation of needing to clean your plate, which many people were raised on. Also, distracted eating, such as watching television or doing work, we're not really in tune with our fullness cues because we're actually focusing on something else and then passing the time with our eating. And in a similar vein, social settings can also increase the how much we're eating, but also how quickly we're eating, which then in turn can increase how much we eat. If we're eating very quickly, we tend to put down quite a bit more than we would if we were taking our time. So while I encourage socialization and spending time with friends, that is an area where you still should check in with yourself just to see how quickly and how much you're eating and if that's aligned with what you typically do. And finally, the visibility of food. So if you're eating at home or if you're eating a family style type of meal, when we see more food options in front of us on the table, there's the propensity to serve ourselves a little more. If something tastes particularly good, we want to get our hands on those seconds right away. But if that's out of sight, out of mind, we're going to most likely stick to one serving. So I touched briefly on the mindful eating, and now we will talk about how GLP-1s plus mindful eating sort of combine, which if you've joined me for some of my previous presentations, this will be fairly familiar. As you know, GLP-1 medications can help us reduce our appetite in multiple ways, including the release of satiety hormones, as well as a slowdown of our gastric emptying, and just that feeling of earlier fullness than maybe we were used to. And so while the hunger physiologically can be reduced, that does not change the environment that we're around and our habits or our visual biases. If something still looks way too small or not enough on a plate before, it will probably still look like that afterward. But you might be able, if you're paying attention or having some mindful eating, you will most likely be able to stop when is more correct and proper. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on deliberate, non-judgmental attention to hunger, as well as when you feel full and what is inspiring you to eat. Are you really feeling hungry? Is it a habit? Is it emotional? Tuning into all of those without feeling any judgment, as in I was feeling sad and I felt inspired to eat. That's not a moral quandary. That's something that happens with a lot of people, but being able to tune into that and have a little more awareness can then help you be aware for the future as well. And it has been seen that people who are tuning into those cues and fullness cues as well can do better with weight maintenance. And people who are combining that mindful eating along with the GLP-1 medications really seem to show some improved outcomes with the weight loss goals. So along with the mindful eating, what are some strategies that we can try and improve these portion sizes where we can get the nutrition we need, but not feel like we're being deprived? First and foremost, if you have not used the plate method, which is a very familiar image, most likely on the right hand of this screen, which is how I encourage people to eat, even if they're not on a GLP-1 medication, to fill up half of their plate with non-starchy vegetables. And then you can have a whole grain or a starchy veggie along with protein as a quarter of your plate, and then healthy fats in there because you do want to be cooking, sauteing with healthy fats. Those are important. And ideally, if you can put it on a plate that's no larger than 10 inches, all the better. But to start out first and foremost with this type of plate method, you don't have to weigh things out, but just to visually look at your plate, you do know that at least 50% of your plate will not be very calorically dense, but very nutrient dense. Also, try not to keep food out for second servings. If you can, serve the food to yourself, to your family, at the stove or the counter, have it portioned out on those plates, and keep the rest away from you, either more than an arm's length or store the leftovers right away. Because again, if it's in front of you, there may be that inspiration to serve yourself a little more, even if you already feel full. In terms of mindfulness, a good idea is to simply slow down. And if possible, try and put the utensils down between bites. And if you can, either notice a clock, or if you have the time and if it's a scenario where it's appropriate, set yourself a timer and make sure that you're not finishing your meal before 15 or 20 minutes. That way, you know you're taking your time on the meal, not trying to rush through it. And again, rushing can lead to cramming and eating more than we meant to. Or alternatively, or to add on, pause in the middle of your meal. If you see sort of you're about halfway through what you're eating, stop yourself and ask, all right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how full am I? And a 5 is about satisfied. You no longer feel hungry, you're fine, you could stop. And then a 6 is slightly full, where you feel just that bit of, okay, now I am full, I should stop. And so if you're landing there about halfway through, take a moment and see if you're hungry a few minutes later. If not, that's okay. You can put that food away for seconds or for leftovers, and you haven't really lost out and you're not wasting food. Also, if you want to even have some prevention up front and beforehand, change the dishware. Try and use smaller plates, try and use smaller bowls, and even the serving spoons and utensils can lead to smaller portions. I remember being stunned when I was back at home where I grew up and saw my parents' dinner plate. Their dinner plate is now the size of my salad plate. So feel free to use a salad plate instead of the dinner plate. There's nobody watching, most likely. And so if you can decrease that size, then you're already going to be benefiting yourself because the plate is going to look fuller faster, and you should still be able to get in the nutrients you need. If not, it's there waiting for you if you do need to add a little more nutrition. Also, try and pre-portion some snacks into individual bags or individual bowls, some type of container where you won't be dipping into a multi-serving bag. It's very, very easy to lose track. I don't know of anyone who, in the middle of eating chips, will count out how many they've already had, including myself. It's very easy to lose track of the count, and before you know it, we're past the 15 chip serving. So pre-portion ahead of time, and that way you won't be falling into that all too common trap. And also keeping a fruit bowl visible or some other healthy snack visible, because we are drawn to what's easy and what's available. And then for the less healthy snacks, doesn't mean you can't have them, but try to keep those out of immediate sight, because if we walk past a candy dish, we're more likely to buy or to grab that candy. But if we walk past a fruit dish, if we're truly hungry, we will most likely grab something off of it. And we're already rounding out to the challenges of this week. So the first challenge I present to you, and probably the one that I would be most enthusiastic about because it could be a very easy switch, is to do the plate swap. So if you're eating dinner at home or whenever you know that you're eating off of a plate in your house, for at least 5 out of these next 7 days, try and use a smaller plate or bowl than you normally would. And of course, focus on that plate method where you're filling it with half non-starchy vegetables, quarter protein, and the quarter of the starch or the breads. And by making that swap, you're going to notice that the portion sizes are going to become a little more close to probably what you're aiming for. And then for the second challenge option, if you feel like mindfulness has been the thorn in your side because you're trying to get through your meals or know that you're distracted when eating, which so many of us are, try and do this mid-meal pause like I suggested. So at one meal every single day, plan to check in with your hunger when you're halfway through. And so just stop, assess, give yourself that ranking. And if you are falling at a 5 or above, then I encourage you to wait 5 minutes more to see if that fullness continues. If it does, then I would encourage you to stop what you're eating, put it away for leftovers, But if your hunger does come back, then it's completely valid for you to eat some more. I'll be excited to know if anybody chooses one of these options or even both. And also, I'd love to hear feedback and how those go. So to put all this together, I'm sure it goes without saying, but bigger portions oftentimes will equal bigger intake. And so this is an area that can trip all of us up unconsciously. And the visual cues that we have, such as the plate sizes, the packaging, but also environmental cues, can really shape how our portions size up. But small practical changes are really all we need. You don't have to throw out your dishware or anything like that, but just making some small changes and sustainable ones that you can do for the majority of your days can really help reduce the intake that is unnecessary, but not feel overly restrictive. And with that, I leave it open to any questions you may have. Or please feel free to share any type of portion distortion experiences you've had or any solutions that you've been able to make that I didn't list here. All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure this evening. I hope that you have gotten some new tips and some new ideas to inspire you on your weight loss progress. If you have any additional questions that you think of later or would like a chance to meet with me, feel free to reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get you in touch with me. And I know everyone at Premier Weight Loss is more than happy to help answer any questions you may have as well. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you in the next one.